Please stand while Father Tim Scully, Director of the Institute for Educational Initiatives and founder of the Alliance for Catholic Education, offers the invocation.
Well, loving God, you have a big fat smile on your face today, looking at these children of yours, these professors who profess Catholic education. You have a big fat smile on your face because you see these parents and grandparents who, at the baptism of these children, became the first educators in the faith. And did they do a job? So, loving God, we turn to you today with joy and thanksgiving. For today we unleash upon the world and the church these young people who are armed with such talent and skill at the loving and insightful hands of the faculty here. So embolden and strengthen their hearts as we celebrate this 10th commencement of Notre Dame's Alliance for Catholic Education. And send your blessing and spirit upon the parents, grandparents, families, and above all, our graduates. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Please feel free to be seated. For the past 2 years, our ACE graduates have lived their call to discipleship by teaching in Catholic schools across the country, including growing numbers of Latino students. This afternoon, we have the great privilege of being joined by Sara Martinez-Tucker as President and CEO of the Hispanic Scholarship Fund. This remarkable woman devotes her considerable gifts and abundant energies to open the doors of higher education to Latino students. A native of Laredo, Texas, Mrs. Martinez-Tucker is the eldest of 3 children of Mexican-American parents who never attended college, but sacrificed to send their children to Catholic schools. She earned both an undergraduate degree in journalism and an MBA from the University of Texas at Austin. Prior to joining the Hispanic Scholarship Fund, Sara spent 16 years at AT&T and was the first Hispanic woman to reach that company's executive level. Her last assignment at the company, she served as Senior Vice President for AT&T's Global Business Communications. Among many honors earned throughout her career, Mrs. Martinez-Tucker was named the 2000 Hispanic of the Year by Hispanic Magazine and one of America's elite Hispanic women by Hispanic Business Magazine in 2003. The readers of Hispanic Online honored her with Latino's Choice Award for Favorite Hispanic Leader in 2002. Martinez-Tucker is a founding member of the National Center for Educational Accountability, a joint venture nonprofit organization just for kids, the University of Texas at Austin, and the Education Commission of the States. Probably most importantly, from my point of view, in 2001, Sarita was honored at Notre Dame with a Doctor of Laws degree, honoris causa. And I have to say parenthetically, as I was sitting on the dais that day, the commencement speaker, President George W. Bush, ignored all of the rest of us and went right up to Sarita and tried to persuade her to join his cabinet, which she gracefully declined. She's a much sought-after advisor and counselor. She's a member of numerous corporate and private foundation boards. In addition, she continues to be highly involved with her alma mater, where she is a member of the Chancellor's Council and the Advisory Council for the College of Natural Sciences at the University of Texas. Under Sara's exceptional leadership, the Hispanic Scholarship Fund has increased its scholarship awards tenfold since the mid-1990s, from awarding $3 million annually to roughly $25 million over the last 3 years in each year. During its 30-year existence, the Hispanic Scholarship Fund has awarded more than 73,000 scholarships, totaling $170 million to aspiring Latino students across the nation. Her guiding vision of the organization is to strengthen America by advancing the college education of Hispanics, and in doing so, bringing hope and enhanced achievement to tens of thousands of Latinos, America's largest minority population, and I might add, soon to comprise 50% of America's Catholic population. My dear friends, please join me in welcoming, with a real Notre Dame welcome, a visionary leader, a tireless servant of the common good, and a product of Educación Católica, nuestra gran amiga Sarita Tucker.
If I promise to keep the speech longer than my introduction, will you applaud as loudly? Thank you, Tim. I have to tell you, when I first met Father Scully and he described the ACE program to me, it meant so much to me. And I'm sad to say that it's taken me this long to come and spend time with you, because as someone who grew up in a border town and as someone who saw the value of a Catholic education, I am so grateful for people who innovate and are always looking for new ways to serve the community. So, Tim, let me say thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything that ACE has done, and now with ACE 10. Now, I heard from Joyce earlier today, 483 graduates, and now adding 82 more today. When I think of all of the lives that you've touched, I have to say, Father Tim, thank you so much for launching this program. I know how hard it is to get something off the ground. To the faculty and staff at ACE, and most importantly to the family members that are here with the graduates today, thank you for all you've done to bring Father Scully's vision to life and to create these wonderful ambassadors into the community that we celebrate today. A special message to you, the graduates. Congratulations on earning your Master's in Education degrees. My best wishes to you. I hope you don't forget what the goal of ACE is, which is to create lifelong advocates and leaders in education. Know that you have my best wishes as you begin that journey. But I also have to tell you how much respect I have for you. Lou and I were talking at lunch today, and I remember when we got the first lay teacher at my Catholic school, and what a scandal that was. And when I sit and think now of the work that you've done, thank you for answering our need to serve disadvantaged students, and thank you for all the students that you've supported over the last 2 years. I know you've made a difference in their lives. I am, as Father Scully said, a product of a Catholic education, and as I was flying here, it occurred to me that aside from my parents, it probably was the singular most important part of my development. I grew up in Laredo, as Father Scully mentioned, and it was a great place to learn to be bicultural. But it was a terrible place to try to get a college-bound education. And I remember waking up when I was 6 or 7 and listening to my parents at the kitchen table, and my mother telling my father that the tuition was too high at Mariupol Christian School. Mind you, this was $8 a child, 2 for $15. And I remember hearing my father say to her, Viola, I don't care what we give up. The children will stay at Mariupol Christian School. I knew that my parents were committed to getting their children the best education possible. And even when I was at Mariupol Christians, I knew that the education my brother, my sister, and I were getting was superior. I will confess, though, that the thing that rankled me then was the outside curricular stuff that the sisters and the lay teachers made us go through. As the oldest, I was always the one called to the principal's office if my brother or my sister got in trouble. When I was held to a different standard, when we had to take holidays to do volunteer work with field trips, little did I know then what important lifelong lessons those were going to be for me. My commitment to my family, my sense of responsibility, my confidence to set stretch goals, all those seeds were planted at Mariupol Christian School. And I hope those students that you touched over the last 2 years 25 years from now, we'll be talking about the seeds that you planted on them while you were here. So on behalf of my family and all of the children that you supported, let me say thank you. But let me also take this moment to acknowledge ACE for all the work that it's doing to put talented students, or to put disadvantaged students in front of people that are talented like you. When I read up on ACE, I mentioned to John when we were driving in from the airport last night, everything in ACE seemed to be circled on 3. And I stepped back and I thought, is it the power of 3? And in fact, this morning, we were with the fellowship, and Steve Grogan brought up the notion of Father Ted Hesburgh's 3 C's. And I thought, does everything at Notre Dame have to cluster around 3s? But there's the Alliance, there's Catholic, there's education. There's the 3 pillars: building community, growing spiritually, becoming better teachers. And when ACE went to look for you, they said, we're interested in passionate role models who can bounce back, who can maintain perspective, and who can grow community. And I stepped back and I thought, everything is in 3s. And then I went back and I thought to myself, you know, the Holy Trinity was the first time I sensed that things were clustered in 3. And then as I went on with my education, government has 3 branches. In the private sector, businesses have 3 stakeholders, the shareholders, the customers, and the employees. And it occurred to me, things do come in 3s. And I know that every one of those 3 was meant to be independent and to symbolize something. But as I looked at those clusters, I stepped back away and I thought, to me it seems that one of those 3 not only serves as a bridge between the other 2, but it gives it sustainability. And it's what I call the power of 3. It's the Catholic that makes an alliance for education comprehensive and sympathetic. It's growing spiritually that allows you to build community and grow professionally. And it's your ability to maintain perspective that I suggest today that'll give you the ability to bounce back and the ability to continue to build community. Why do I say that? I think maintaining perspective will give you an energy to bounce back when you face adversarial conditions. I think maintaining perspective will allow you to facilitate better community building. How do you maintain perspective? How, when you go through life, 25 years from now, 30 years from now, will you have known that you maintain perspective? My father, who many years ago I overheard sitting at the kitchen table, was a great influence in my life. And he gave me 3 pieces of advice that I'd like to pass on to you today. The first thing he said was, be true to yourself. As I left Laredo to drive 235 miles to Austin, he sat me down and he said, Mijita, always remember you're a person first, and then a gender, and then an ethnicity. Ask for help when you need it, but don't rely on crutches. I couldn't imagine on that drive to Austin why my father took his last conversation with me before I went off to college to remind me of that. Years later, as I look back, I see how easy it is sometimes to put a label on yourself. I was a student. I was a reporter. I was a grad student. And then when I started my career at AT&T, I was a professional. I was an executive. I was part of a dual-career couple. I loved my time at AT&T. It's where I learned to be accountable. It's where I learned to grow profits. It's where I learned to sell ideas. But as long as I considered myself a corporate executive, I lost my sense of self. And I remembered my father's advice. And on this road of life, sometimes you can lose your sense of self. It's important to always remember who it is that you are and what you're trying to be. The one thing I was sure of was how much my education had made possible. And I stepped back and I looked at my community. And for far too many children in my community, their heritage is their destiny. They don't have anything else to show them the way on what's possible. I wake up every morning driven to bring a college education to as many Latino students as possible so that they can create their destiny. If they choose their heritage, that's terrific, but I want them to have a choice. As you leave Notre Dame, as you become part of the ACE family but are no longer here as part of ACE, what will define you? What is it that you'll be remembered for? My sister Rosie said that she heard a speaker once talk about, at headstones, people look at the birth year and the death year. And he said, but it's all about the dash. It really is what you do in between that matters. What defines you as you're leaving here today, and how do you make sure you don't lose it? Second, remember your place, remember your role in inspiring others. You've been at 100 schools in 13 states. You've seen a lot of disadvantaged children. I'll never forget being in an audience or being in a gym in Atlanta, Georgia, sitting with a room full of Latino students. I couldn't get any energy in the room. I just couldn't connect with them. And I finally said to them, We just had a local fundraiser. We have $100,000. If you had my job and you were going to spend that $100,000 to get more Latinos to go to college, what would you do? And immediately, the children started speaking. Build an office. And I said, build an office? And they said, we need an office right here in Dalton, Georgia. And I said, what would I do in this office? And they started talking about different kinds of counselors that I would put in that office, people that they could relate to, people who understood what they were facing at home. And I said, you guys realize for all the money I take for rent and salaries, that leaves very little money for scholarships. And I'll never forget Benjamin in the front row saying to me, but Mrs. Tucker, if I can't see myself in college, all the money in the world won't get me there. Will you be able to recognize when others around you need inspiration? Make sure you do, and make sure you do something about it. Third, know that if your work is true, if your cause is pure, if your cause is holy, your work will probably never be done. When I moved from AT&T to the scholarship fund, we had succeeded in meeting our founder's goal, which is to become the premier scholarship provider for Latino students in this country. But we looked at what was happening to Latino students in this country. Half of our kids graduate from high school, only a third go to college, and roughly 10% of us have a college degree. So we put a stake in the ground and we said, we're going to double the rate of Latinos earning their college degrees. Immediately we faced criticism. You can't fix bilingual education, you can't fix public education. We heard all the reasons why we couldn't succeed. But then I thought about what Benjamin was saying to me, and I thought to myself, it is important for us to break that cycle of undereducation, one student, one family at a time. So while Father Scully described for you the numbers that describe our success, success for me is when I meet a parent who's driven his family 120 miles to come to one of our programs. Success for me is talking to a father who says, Mrs. Tucker, should I tell my young son to aim for the University of Georgia, or should I have him shoot for a less prestigious school? Success for me is when a father comes up to me in San Antonio, Texas, and says, thank you for supporting my children without taking away my dignity. It's when I'm in a room full of community leaders in Kansas City, Hispanic community leaders, and 3 of them introduce themselves by saying, I'm one of your scholars. You can make a difference. We probably won't get to our goal by 2010, which is the stated, but in the meantime, we will have learned so much about service to my community. And my hope for you would be that today, as you commence your journey to be lifelong advocates and leaders in education, you remember to stay true to yourself. You recognize your role in inspiring others, and you'll stay challenged by the work to be done. I started the story with a message about my father, and I'd like to end it with a story about my father. He was the best example I've had in my life of someone who was true to himself, of someone who liberated others, and someone who got the job done. What defined my father? He wanted his family to be close. He wanted his children to be even closer. And as children, we saw him make career decisions his whole life that allowed his family to stay together. What inspired him? It was creating a better life for his children. He made so many sacrifices for us to have a Catholic education and then to make sure that we all had a college aspiration. We lived with his encouragement to go to college. My favorite story about my father happened about 10 years ago. I got home to San Francisco. I'd been traveling, and my husband said, you've got to call home immediately. I feared the worst, and sure enough, when my father answered, I could tell he was crying, and the bottom fell out of my stomach, and he said he couldn't talk. And I could tell he was trying to say, mijita, mijita, but he just couldn't find his voice. He passed the phone off to my sister Rosie, and she told me that our brother Neto, at age 35, had earned his college degree that day. And my father came to the phone when he found his voice, and he said, all of my children are college graduates. I can rest. Think today, I celebrate my father every time I visit a college campus. As you sit here today, think of everyone that was instrumental in your life, in your making a decision to go to college, in your choosing Notre Dame, in supporting you while you've been here at Notre Dame, in connecting you with ACE, in making you part of the ACE family. Think of all of that influence on you. My single most important message to you this afternoon, your impact on others will be as much as or even more than others' impact on you. Let me say that again in a different way. Think of the magnitude of everyone that's influenced you up until now. You can have that much of an impact or more on others. Each of you made your own way here today. It may have been easier for some than it was for others, but you earned your place here today. What can you do with this wonderful gift? What will you do? On behalf of all of those children who you've inspired so far, and for all of the children you've yet to inspire. Let me say thank you and Godspeed.